Hello everyone, thanks for coming along today. The flowers here are in full swing, so it's a little hard to get to stuff. But I want to show you guys some beautiful magnetite river cobbles that I have from near Farthing, Wyoming. I'll insert here a couple of short snippets about the location. Here is a beautiful Ventifact that we brought from near Farthing. I believe this area is known as the Iron Mountain Mining Complex. To my knowledge, they don't mine it anymore. And I will put here a very short segment of the video I did back in August of 2015 showing these large Ventifacts. I'm just showing up close here the amazing fluting patterns that the wind etched into this magnetite. What we're seeing here is basically a wind-polished dike of this magnetite material. It's a very crystalline magnetite, just by erosion broken up into these big, beautiful pieces that we're seeing here. But today, we're going to focus on these river cobbles, which are found in the alluvial deposits not far from there. They're a titanium-rich magnetite, probably 100% pure. I mean, there's really no other mineral in this rock other than magnetite. Extremely heavy. Alan called them cannonballs. But if you look at these closely, you can see they're very crystalline. They're not granular by any means. They actually have a fairly decent crystal structure, which has given me the curiosity to polish one. And I have a really big one, which we'll find here in a minute. I'm showing them to you. So look at this, the magnet sticks to it so much I can pull the rock out with the magnet. Yeah, they're really, yikes, they're really magnetic. It's not the kind of thing where, see, I could almost pick it up. That's probably a 3 or 4 pound rock right there, and the magnet's picking it up. So, very high grade iron content, that's why they were mining it. Again, the mine nearby is called the Staunton Quarry. And as far as I know, it's abandoned now. You may need permission to get in there. I don't know how its status is now. I was there, again, 2015 or so. Here's a nicer, bigger one. Yikes, that's so heavy. But I have the curiosity to polish one of these. If you guys watched the video on rock collecting along the North Platte River, see, here's a rough piece that we got out of the mine. And if you watch the video about rock hounding along the North Platte River, those ancient gravel deposits are massive. The hillsides are just made of this material. And this area is no different. These are in ancient deposits, loaded with gravel of all different types, but we were picking up these cannonballs, as my friend liked to call them, just because they're heavy, they're smooth, and okay, the big one that I wanted to show you. I should do this video in the winter when I can get to the rocks. Okay, oh, here it is. So this is one, I want to drop it or my phone. Beautiful big cobble. This was sitting on the ground like this, and I thought, oh, there's a nice big one. Rolled it over, and it's broken half. Never found the other half, so it broke at some prehistoric time. But I've been wanting to polish this. So come along with me today. We're going to get the tools out, and we're going to polish this baby up. Before we get started with the polishing, I wanted to show you this cobble here. You can see how shiny it is. It's a cloudy day, as you can see. Yet, this is just metallic shine. I can barely hold it up. That's a very heavy rock. But can you see the crystal structure? I am hoping that when I polish the flat side of the rock that we're going to polish today, that it exposes this crystal structure. I don't know if it will. I've never polished magnetite. So you guys are coming along with me on what will be quite the adventure, I think. Well, so here is the rock in question. Again, I'm going to be polishing the rough side because I want to preserve. This isn't like a regular rock. It's just a chunk of iron. So I want to preserve this natural cobble, natural river-rounded cobble structure. When the sun is shining, you might be able to see it a little better, but the crystal structure is really cool. There's a definite grain. So what we need to do is basically, this is going to be domed, but you see there's this big lump here where it did not break all the way through. In fact, if you look at it, there we go, now my camera's focused. This seems to be along a vein of much smaller crystals, and that's probably why it broke along there. You can see the larger crystals down here and in the rest of the rock, but this is a little finer, and I think that's just a vein, because if you look at the outside, it's still the same. So I need to, long story short, is I need to cut this off with a blade rather than spend time with the cup wheel. This is a little different than in the previous video where I was only polishing, because that rock was already so smooth that I was able to start right away with polishing. So here's what we're using for this step. I am using a Makita variable speed. You can see the dial right here. Turn it on. So I could turn it down almost, that's probably slow enough to polish with if I needed to. You could get some kind of outside water source and do polishing. But we're not going to do that. I have a polisher, as you guys saw in the previous video. So I'm going to take this off. It's got the handy, oh, what do you call this? The reset button, you know, where you can hold it, kind of like a power drill has, so you can change the bit. So we take that off. I'm going to use a blade to cut that lump off the rock to save us some time. I have found it really doesn't matter which way you put the blade on, even though technically they should go that way, but for what I'm doing, yeah, I got it on there the right way. I always like to tell guys in the granite shop, if you look at the way the teeth are, so this is going to spin that way. See, I have the blade on backwards. I would tell them, just imagine a pretty blonde spinning, and the way her hair would spin is the way you need the blade to go. So here you can see the teeth go, they're kind of facing this way, and it should turn this way. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, so now the blade's on there right. I hope that makes sense. And I hope I'm centered in the video. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut that lump off with the blade. Safety glasses, must have safety glasses, hearing protection, and a dust mask. And then we're going to take the blade off and use diamond cup wheels. Since I haven't done this in so many years, I don't know which cup wheels have been used on this grinder. If they've been used on another grinder or a polisher, they end up bouncing terribly because no two machines are exactly the same. So I just brought them all out here. I have 4 different cup wheels. we'll go through them until I find the one that is used to this grinder, if that makes sense. So we're going to transition here, and I will cut off that lump. Looks like we've got a bit of a storm coming, so we'll get as far as we can. This is kind of nice for me because it's cloudy. I'm going to try and affix my little tripod into the sculpture here and film our work. I'm gonna do the grinding on the ground just because I don't want the dust to get everywhere. And then we'll do the polishing like we did last time up on top of the ladder.
This is really nice doing this with the storm coming in because we got some wind that'll blow the dust away from where we're working.
Just wanted to point out that if I were going to be doing really any more cutting at all, I would put the guard on. You'll notice I'm doing it without the guard just because whatever I did last with the grinder didn't need the guard. And I'm only cutting off this little lump, so I had enough confidence in my skill level and the tiny little bit that I was going to be doing. That's why I do not have the guard, but you guys should always put the guard on when you are using a blade. The grinder obviously comes with a handle, and the handle can go on in a number of positions, and depending on your comfort level, some people use the handle, some people don't. I oftentimes don't unless I'm trying to cut a long straight line. When you're cutting a little lump off a rock like this, especially on the ground as I am, you have to hold the grinder in so many weird positions that often the guard and the handle get in the way. And you just got to know your skill level because you could get hurt. And I am in no way promoting that you go cut your fingers off. So please be careful if you do this stuff at home.
Okay, relatively uneventful. It's just that much less that we have to grind with the cup wheel. So now this is more of a uniform surface. I don't want this in the grass, so I'm putting it in the box. Now we'll remove the blade and go to we'll just start trying our cup wheels, find one that works nice.
So just to clarify what I mean by the cup wheel being nice or not nice, they're all good. It's just what happens when you use them on a different machine. There's a slight difference in the vibration and it tends to bounce. And then you have to just use it for a few minutes to get rid of that bounce.
Hey, that one I can tell is going to work really nice. So we'll use that. This is probably considered a coarse. So this will really hog through the material.
As I was watching and editing the video, I thought it would be a good idea to insert a little bit about what I've been talking about when I talk about the handle and the guard and how the handle and the guard get in the way when you're cutting rocks on the ground or in awkward positions. And I want to show you some of the tools. So here I put the handle on the grinder. You can see I even, at some point, I cut the edges off of this handle, probably to keep it from getting in the way on some project or another. And the handle could go here, or it can go in this hole here. And some of the grinders even have a hole up here now where you can put the handle. It's like I said, everybody holds the grinder differently. I was trained back in the 90s with no handle. I never even knew what a handle was, and I never even knew what a guard was. I think the granite shop would get the grinders in and throw all that stuff away. What do we want that for? So I was trained that way, and so it's still kind of awkward for me to use that, but I found it very helpful, especially, like I said, if you're making a long straight cut, you want the handle on there. And the grinders do have an arrow, the newer ones anyway, that tell you which way the blade's gonna spin. I still have the cup wheel on here from yesterday. The different blades we would use, if you guys have seen the wind chimes, yeah, you can see them from here. You zoom in. So that wind chime up there is actually made of blades and core bits that are worn out. This is the blade I use for bigger rocks. And with this, obviously, you can't use the guard because it's much bigger than the guard. So you definitely want to have the handle on there. But you can see these are diamond blades. You can see the diamonds in them. The better brands have more diamonds. You can buy these blades for like I don't know, 50 bucks each or something, and they'll have like 2 diamonds in them and they just don't cut. You get what you pay for when it comes to diamond tools. This blade is unique. These are what we use to cut the ovals, as you can see in that sculpture there. So those, all the ones with round edges, this is a cut blade. Yeah, here you can see the diamonds really well. And they line them with diamonds on the more expensive brands anyway, to keep them from pinching in the stone and throwing you and your grinder across the room. Zoom back out. So these are very handy. This is the normal, 4.5, maybe 5-inch blade that we would use for standard countertop fabrication. The pads, of course, I explained in the previous video. This is a 50 grit. You can clearly see the diamonds there. Then they all go, I explained in the last video, so I won't go over it all, but they go basically like sandpaper, finer and finer, until you finally get to, I believe these are made with either cerium oxide or titanium oxide in a resin. And these are your final buff pads. This is what brings out the high shine. And I don't use them unless the rock is worthy of it, because some rocks just won't take a shine, like the magnetite that we're seeing in this video. It ended up having some pits in it, and so as you'll see at the end of the video, I did not use the buff pad, but I did everything up through the buff pad, and it came out quite gorgeous. I think you guys will enjoy it. Again, the guard, here's the cup wheel. Again, you can see the diamonds. Anyway, just thought I would insert this little blip in here so you guys know what I was referring to when I talk about the handle and the guard and when to use what. Anyway, let's keep going with the video.
I'm really glad we have some wind. Doing this one, there's no wind, is horrible. I would be completely black.
If you saw the last video where I was polishing the obsidian, I mentioned that the flex polisher runs at about 3,000 RPMs. And this grinder at the top speed runs about 10,000 RPMs. So you do not want to use polishing equipment on a grinder without having variable speed and turning the speed way down. But I wanted to point out here, you notice I'm basically handling it the same way. It's dry and higher speed, but other than that, it's the same process. You want to make sure not to dig into the material with the edge of your cup wheel. That is devastating. It makes a big divot that then you have to take all the surrounding material down enough to get rid of that divot that you caused. So there is a technique to it. This rock is very similar in shape to the other one. Basically kind of a flattened dome is what we're trying to achieve. And I want to hog the bulk of the material down with the cup wheel before we go to the polisher. Thankfully, it was quite windy and most of the dust was blowing away, which was nice. This was actually quite a bit of grinding. I've sped this up by 10 times to give you an idea of how long it took just to grind that down. It ended up being quite a bit of material by the time you get through most of the holes and the pits. And as you'll see later, there still are a few imperfections in the rock that I was willing to live with. Otherwise, I might not have any rock left. Pretty much got the shape of the rock to where I want it. You can see there's going to be some persistent, there's a crack in it right there. I don't know that I'll be able to make that go away without using epoxy. I always prefer not to fill, but I definitely can. I think this is ready to polish though. Yeah, it's got a couple little holes. So I will round the edges. But this is going to be a nice piece. It's harder than I thought it would be, which is interesting. So we'll set up here. Because
because I could definitely polish it up here. There's no danger, you know. And it'll make mud. It'll make some black mud, but that's okay. Yeah, that's still pretty deep right there. I'm afraid if I keep grinding, it's going to keep going, though, and I'll end up with no rock left. So there's definitely enough there that it will show us the crystal structure that we're after. Trying to decide if the rain's going to get me. We get these storms in the afternoon and then it ends up not raining. So I kind of don't believe them sometimes. All right, let me get the polisher going. If you guys watched the video where I polished the piece of obsidian from Mexico, here's the flex polisher that I explained to you guys. If you have not watched that, I recommend that you go back and watch it, because I won't explain it all again, other than to say that this is a water fed. This one is not variable speed. Water fed. This is the Flex Original. All these tools are available at grandquartz.com as well as other places. I've always liked Grand Quartz. They always provide excellent customer service. I'm going to be using, because again, this is not a square surface, it's kind of domed, I'm going to be using a soft backer, and I've got my pads organized. This is the number 6, I believe, that's on here, and I have the pads in order this time. So it's basically the same principle as sanding. So I'm going to set up my camera there on the sculpture, and let's see what we can make this look like. Here's what it looks like now after the cup wheel. Very rough, quite pitted. I'm hoping to bring out a nice, probably not the highest shine because it is magnetite, but I'm hoping to expose the crystal structure. It makes me think of those meteorites when they cut them and polish them into slabs, and just how cool they look. I doubt this will be that cool, but let's see what we got. All right, here we go, guys. Let's see if we can get this done before the rain comes. You want the pad really centered on there so it doesn't vibrate so much. Since this video is already quite long, I'm only going to show this 50 grit pad here sped up by 10 times, and then we will skip ahead. Yeah, the crystal structure is really cool. The reason I'm holding my hand like this is because this mud is really black, and it'll get everything, including myself, black. So I'm just trying to avoid some of that. Otherwise, I would polish like this. During the polishing process, the coarse pads are always the ones where you kind of spend the most time, because that's where you're basically erasing all the marks left by the cup wheel, any pits that were remaining. You're getting the general shape, the roll on the edges, etc. You might remember in the previous video I mentioned that the 4 pad, or the 400 grit, is kind of a stopping point in the polishing process where you look to see how you're doing, because really any scratches or anything that you don't get out by the 400, you're probably not going to get out. So let's skip ahead to that stage and see where we're at. Alright, so I got it dried off. It's more cracked than I thought. I'm going to take it up another pad or two, but without some epoxy to fill those, it's not really worth taking up to a high shine. But this definitely reveals the metallic interior. It just looks like burnished steel or something. But you can definitely see the grains, and I'm hoping in sunlight. I've got my flash on for you here, but I'm hoping to see the crystal structure revealed. One thing good about polishing a chunk of iron is it stays put. I don't need any clamps or anything for this thing. It ain't going anywhere. All right, well, let me take it up
I guess I'll go up through the 6 and we'll just see what it looks like. You can see the rain is falling here. Jumping ahead now to where I just finished the number 6, or the 3000 grit. I'm just rinsing everything off.
I want to rinse the rocks over here off so they're not all covered with mud.
One thing I learned in my years in the granite business, if you rinse the mud off while it's fresh, it's much easier than letting it dry and then trying to rinse it off. So since I was kind of close to that one sculpture and the sunflowers, I want to get everything clean, and the ladder and the rock and everything that I can spray off. All right, well, here it is, cleaned off, polished up through the 6. You can see it's just metallic. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, you can definitely see some crystals in there. All the different shapes run into each other. Oh yeah. I will wait till the sun comes out. It looks like the sun's about to come out over there. And then I'll wrap up the video, showing it to you guys dried off and in the sun. I am covered with iron. This is why I got out of the polishing business. Yeah. In the sun, we're looking at this rock kind of cleaned up. I got cleaned up as well. This was a fun video to make. You can clearly see the crystal structure by means of the reflections. And then when we turn the rock over, it really has quite a few pits and fractures, so I did not go up all the way. I would feel better if I could fill it with an epoxy or a filler of some kind, and I don't have any right now. Like I said, I haven't done this in a number of years. But this is definitely plenty so we can see the structure. I'm not sure if you can see the slight variances in the reflections, but definitely very crystalline, which is kind of unique. I've seen magnetite polished, like in gift shops and whatnot. They'll have them, and they're some kind of a massive form that doesn't really have any structure, or they're man-made. I'm not sure, as the case would be, but this is definitely, we could almost call it a granitoid in terms of its structure. It's just a bunch of interlocking, fairly large crystals. I would say 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 or so. Very cool. Thanks for sticking with me through this video. It was definitely a lot of fun to make. Let's see what it looks like wet real quick. Definitely just metallic. No, because it's metal, water doesn't really bring out any color. In fact, it evaporates quite quickly. All right, there you have it. A beautifully polished Magnetite river cobble from near Farthing, Wyoming. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know if there's any other oddball rocks you'd like to see polished. I've kind of stayed away from the normal stuff because I figured there's enough people on YouTube already polishing agates and whatnot. So I kind of focus on these oddities, for lack of a better term. God bless you guys. Look forward to seeing you on the next one.